I have done some more work on this project, and I want to show you where we are with it, trying to get to the construction drawings. This is about where the foundation plan is at this point, and you'll be able to look this over when you see the print form. But generally this pedestal and footing is located first from the edge of this foundation here, and then this one is located by the center line of that. So it is a little bit off center of that steel beam, so you should have no problem bringing something up to get your bearing for that east end of beam B on the first floor. And the second thing, just to note about this foundation, see this brown line comes in around the margin. This is this where they've got this built out here like this. I don't know if you're going to be able to affect that same thing with the veneer brick. It seems like it's probably doable, so I'm showing it for now in there like this. I'm not sure exactly how that is put together at this point, what the flashing detail is or whatever, but it almost seems like it's necessary. And this is just quickly, I'm just going to go through these and try to remember what I was doing at the time that I put them together. First, I wanted to show this flat ceiling. Brennan mentioned we probably have to go down to a flat ceiling for cost purposes for one. So, but I don't end up showing the final flat ceiling in this film. I continue to work with this scissor truss ceiling to see. There's just a whole variety of things that we're going to cover in this film, so just try to remember and keep notes or whatever. So that was the flat ceiling coming across, which is no big deal to me. It goes down to 10 feet from about 13 or 14. And then I softened these stairs up a little bit by widening them and making them into a pedestal kind of stair. They're still just 11 inches deep this way and 7.5 high, so you could even make that a little more gracious if you wanted to, but I think it's better than something like this. So then we go back to this foundation. I'm not sure what this is, just a final kind of look, I suppose, at it. So coming out to the patio foundation, it's going to take two 2x2 inch thick footings for that, and then you'll come up with some sort of pedestal, whether you use a sonotube and then square it off at the top. The idea is whatever we square these off at the top, and they have to be big enough to capture the base of the column, whatever column we use, that is going to determine the final margin coming out this way. I pulled this 18-foot tube to the outside of that so that when it's all said and done, you can buy 18-foot LVLs to go from the end of your column, end of your wood column here, to the inside of your wall framing, so that you don't have to get into 19-foot or 20-footers or something like this. The next thing I did after developing this foundation plan and making sure things were going to be good to go with that, I tested all the various members, all the structural members throughout this again. And this beam G, I think it ends up as beam F, but they said two 14-inch LVLs for that patio covering on each side. A little shorter than 11 7/8, but they were more expensive. So I'm showing two 14-inch LVLs at the patio. And then the other, after I tested all the other members, here were the essential things that changed in the plan. And one of those members are the attic floor joists, and because those have fixed stairs, we have to rate those as if they were bedrooms. We have to rate those as 30. And I was a little worried that this was going to, that particular item was going to almost make the project impossible to do with wood construction. But once everything was said and done, so the attic floor was rated at 30, and I ran the rest of the other members that are bearing, particularly on beam A, which is the main beam that we're partitioning off that kitchen, taking out that kitchen wall, by means of added all these loads, the ones that are including, yeah, there's the attic load there on it. And the upshot of all of that, once that was all said and done, we had before, I believe the last time we were in this, we were into two 20-footers. I had them going all the way across, but we were into two 20-inch LVLs. And when I get all these loads finally accounted for, select, it looks like you can get by with 322s. I believe I'm showing it, however, as 324s. but you can definitely get by with 322s. And there is an improvement at 324s, particularly at deflection. That's probably why I just chose that for the extra cost, which wasn't very serious. So I end up showing those as 324 inches, those beam A. Yeah, see, they're 24 inches deep, so I did that for that reason. Now, when I did this beam B, at first, this wanted 3/16 coming across here. But later in the film, I shorten this span some, because we can do 4 14s. If we thicken this wall back up to 7 inches, we can do 4 14-inch LVLs. We'll do this. But if we shorten this span, and I'll cover that section of photos in a minute, then we can use 3 of these 14s. And the reason I don't like the 16s is the door is just at code height. It might even be a half inch below code height at 6'7" or something like this, and it's probably not going to be aligning. The casings of that won't be wanting to align with at least this, and this, or whatever else you do out here. These, you could shorten all these down, but the way things developed, I ended up making this short and making these 3/14s. And we go through that section. If you want this back long again, I made it short to have an alignment with this window to get these center lines aligned, because it looked like maybe a person wouldn't like it from this side. As I said, though, we'll look at that in a minute. But so that was the final analysis on that, or what I did with that was 3/14s to do beam B. And then this here is this, all these joists in here are running this way. I used to have those, initially I ran those 24-inch ones or the 20-inch ones all the way over to this wall. But now I was using a different roof structure then, wasn't counting anything for the patio structure. So that was no longer possible to just run those across there, because we can use 2 or 3, it takes actually 3 9¼ inch LVLs, and those are installed almost like joists up flush into the ceiling to hold that wall up there, and the roof load from the attic load and the roof load coming down on it. It's going to take 3 9¼ inch LVLs at this location here. And then over here, this actually, for this north bearing of 1C, that's going to just take 3 2x10s, and I just put ½ inch OSB between each of those across here as far as that goes, if this window doesn't get any wider. Window's currently shown as that 8-foot sliding unit to leave a margin of wall on here. The next size on those sliding units is 10 foot. I think we covered this. At the end of the film, though, I will show a few different things with windows on this wall as well. Continuing with these main structural members, after beam D, you have beam E. And this can be a flush or a drop beam, meaning, this ceiling can come across here completely flat, and this can be pushed up into the ceiling, and these joists are running this way, suspended from it. What I've been showing so far in some of those walkthroughs in the last film was a drop beam, and this opening had no casing. That is one more option, is that this opening could be, reduced to where there's casing on it if you wanted something like that. I don't show that. This is what I'm showing now, and I'm showing this as a drop beam. After beam E, the last, besides the patio beams, which are beam G, is this beam here. And the way it looked like to me that this was put together is that right now there's a couple 2x10s. It's a flush beam that comes so far across here, and we're taking out this wall that was bearing on. So those 2 shorter 2x10s are just going to be removed, and that's going to be replaced with 2 longer ones that go from this wall to that wall. So in addition, though, I don't ever mention that, in addition to at beam A, that went from 2 members to 3 24-inch LVLs. And so then the only other ones then are these. These are the only other big structure, besides your door headers and so forth. Those are going to be the last structural members to deal with, longer ones like that. This next section, dealing from this elevation here, came back out here, and this is where we had pretty much left off. I can think the last time that I looked at this, this is still a big 512 pitch roof. But one of the things to notice, this topography is put in here according to those county maps, so that might vary a little bit, but according to what I put in from them, you have this situation here where this is about 12 inches out here, 12 inches high. So that's going to have to be remedied somehow. In addition then, once you put those footings in down low, those 2x2s low, you can come up with a sono tube or whatever else you want, and then the top 6 inches or whatever, those can be formed off, and then that will determine the outside margins, both the west and the north and the south. We'll flush up with that with an expansion joint between them and some sort of sensible control joint. But when I started looking at this first thing, I wanted to bring that roof down regardless. Even if it's flat, whatever, I wanted to bring that down if it was possible. So, and I didn't think that was doing anything critical, so I just went to that straight look at the east end of that little roof section. Yeah, you can see how I had to thicken the slab to make that work there, but you will just fill that, presumably. And then we had the 10-inch columns out front, and these are too skinny anyway for as tall as this is. It's almost 10 feet tall. So we go to a 10-inch column back there, and that's going to end up about 9'8" high. If that beam were to stay right there, that column would be in the bottom of the beam and end up 9'8" high. But what I did is I pulled this, just that outer layer, just that last piece of cladding of that beam cladding, I pulled that north to come across the surface of that veneer brick, almost like a frieze, and then actually dropped it down onto that window lintel / frieze style, and that enabled me to drop those roofs another 6 inches. And I think it looked better for this window for that all to come down anyway, just to get even some more separation or something. But I wanted it to come down anyway just because of things happening on this back wall. That's that existing downspout adapter, and we'll just talk about the downspouts further as we go further along. First, initially, I did it this way, kind of separated this whole structure by putting this vertical downspout here. And I think at the end, you're going to need more than one downspout, particularly more than one 2x3 downspout, because this plane of the roof picks up half of that. So, you know, half of everything's coming down through here. So at the end, some more downspouts get added along here, 1 or 2 downspouts get added. At that time, though, when I had just one at this end, I kind of figured somebody could make it go into, or relocate that adapter and make that work. And when the column gets thicker, the portion of the pedestal that comes up also, you know, gets commensurately thicker. So that's what we had at this point. I think all this trim goes to white, but that's what we had at that point. And I want to cover a few things on this back. And so now when that was said and done, you had about 9 foot to the bottom of that finished clad beam and 10 foot to a flat ceiling. But I had finished out this 5/12 pitch model just to reflect what is happening with this beam cladding here and here, and putting these 10-inch columns in. You can see how the base of that gets a little larger. And that's the flat ceiling moving up, but I'm still showing that slope ceiling. And then paint everything white, more or less. Back here, I started looking at this back wall in terms of these windows and what's going to happen inside. And I understand Brennan, said just show we're going to close those windows off. There's actually quite a bit more wind and fenestration aside. There's quite a bit more to consider with regard to that second floor because of the walls we're taking out on the first floor, and that's going to have to be accounted for at this point, as well as some reasonable design to go with whatever we do on the first floor. So I can't just say cover these windows and so I make that sensible. One thing that happens, these became that 22-inch high and they became 3 thick. So it started to, I'm going to show you what happens with this roof here. These 4 here. So this is where it was, and it got taller as well. It went from 20 to 24, and then 2 of these are out here, almost pushing out here. So, but it is doable to come up, and that is actually a 212 pitch, little cricket thing there. That's 212 pitch, so that can actually, regardless of what happens here, this can be covered with ice and water shield and shingles, like this. And what helped us with that, of course, was dropping this. That 6 inches helped us, and it didn't hurt us here. You just run a tiny bit of the roof, the fascia and the gutter, maybe the drip edge gets run back underneath that overhang. But it helped us by dropping that point where that has to interface with that. And at that point, when I have these bearing members, BMG, these LVLs, these 14-inch LVLs, where they are, which is kind of in the center of these finished columns, that heel height is 4 inches, which is probably adequate to do the truss as shown, or this kind of a structure as shown. But I moved those LVLs to the inside some, and that heel height gets up to 5 1/16 then, which should be more than adequate. And then this is a quick series then from the inside, because I came in here. Here's that drop beam, E, I guess that is, coming across here, and that could be flat if you wanted to. I'm showing with the drop beam and actually showing the crown in this hallway. But looking at this door here, I guess, I don't know why, but I guess not because I wanted to necessarily shorten that span and help us with those beam Bs. Remember, they want 16-inch LVLs. 4 14s or 3 16s, and I don't think we could use the 3 16s because it makes this doorway too short. So I decided, what if we just made that doorway symmetrical with that other one there? And I think that makes it like 9'4" wide, and it's in alignment with that over there, and that's with it at that pulled back situation. So it's like that. But if you want an alignment that's aligned through here, then you do it like that instead of this. So that was one thing I did, and I actually just left it back because there's some room for art here, or photos or whatever. I don't think that is going to hurt with this passage through here with the dining room. Just think, because you're going to have a dining room table here that's probably going to center on this window. So I thought, all things considered, I just made that even with a 9'3" doorway, and I left that at that for now. So if you disagree, let me know. And then the next thing, now I'm not sure why at the time I made this particular slide, it was showing the 24 as the only solution, the past design. But now it does show the 322s as a solution. So I don't know what that cost delta is. It can't be too much, but I'm leaving the 24s in unless you want to pick that extra little bit up. Just a lot better passing on all of these different categories with the extra couple inches. So yeah, you could see I took them up. And I didn't get a close shot of this, but what is happening here, what I'd like to, a lot of this is going to come down to this band joist that's at the end of those existing 2x10 floor joists. And I would almost like to see that thing cut out and replaced with an LVL. And then your hangers put on these joists, and then this LVL fastened to this. But when this first tall LVL is put on, I always have them run 16D or 20D nails into these studs at their 16 inches on center into that bottom wall plate, and then this replaced band joist is nailed into that, and then these are nailed up according to their schedule, which is probably 5 rows of 16Ds holding all of this together. I know what also happened with that is that I'm still showing 22s there, but in any event, this 3.5 inch thick wall was not enough thickness to be the bearing point at that end. So that wall also had to go to a 5.5 inch wall. So now this one and that one and these out ones, everything's 5.5 inch framing, and this is all 5.5 now. And yeah, that's the center line moving over for that. Now looking at this wall, yeah, this was because this was these 3/16s, and it was showing that door kind of short, and the casing's not aligned with these ones here. So that was, once it all said and done, 3/14s actually did it because we had shortened that span a little bit. And so we were able to bring that up to regular alignment with these other windows through here. Now these two in here though, if we want to do something different there, if a person wants to do something different there, just showing you standard those are 4 foot wide right now, and they're double casements. And I did want to mention, they make these where these will open old style, where they swing into the room, or they swing out into the patio space, and that is completely open through there with some sort of roll down screening. But these are shown as just standard casement windows. They have more structure through the middle, but they are shown this way. And this is keeping their alignment all the same and going to, I think this is probably the 41-inch size, and that comes all the way down on top of a 4-inch backsplash. I'm not sure how you're going to put the rest of the things together in there, but I did want to show some variations on these. These short ones don't work with that grill pattern, for one thing. So a little taller, and they come all the way down, but it all depends on what you want to try to make in there. And then this is that same size window, the 41.5, but it's pushed up because these headers across these do not need to be much, a couple 5.5s or 3 5.5s. They can actually go all the way up to there and all the way down to there, where they become 48-inch windows, and they are, within 3 or 4 inches of the ceiling, 5 inches of the ceiling. That was just some variations that you can work with when you start putting the cabinetry and the other details together in that kitchen. Things to know. So I actually, at the moment, I just left those high like that. And the first thing I did when I got back here was lower this pitch from 512 to 412. 412 is the lowest you can go and not have to run any ice and water shield underneath it. So I wanted to see what I could do with these windows in combination with the other things that have to happen on that second floor inside, and whether or not this 412 pitch, where that ice and water shield only needs run on the low slope piece here, whether I could make that work. When I do that with the scissor truss, 412 over 212, you end up with 13.4 to the peak. Now we come to the situation, after just looking at this, getting that down to 312 and knowing I could probably, for one thing, even when it was 512, we could do what we wanted with this window here. So actually this is just that window that was over here. It's relocated down this way. But I would recommend, these have that glass in them, so those really can't. But I would definitely recommend a window at this corner that can be arranged with the interior part of it. And this arrives us at this situation with what is going to happen with this bath, and why this practically needs designed as part of this project, whether it actually needs executed as a part of this project, because there's nowhere for those pipes to go once we put that beam in there. There's nowhere for those pipes to go. But we'll return to that in a minute, and I'll look at the windows a little bit more. Now these are these dividing walls here and here. From outside, these are these dividing walls. So that's the tub space there in that guest bathroom. That's the tub space, and that window's easily settled. I would just do this. I would just keep that same opening. I wouldn't reframe the opening at all. I think it's shown as 34.5 wide, so I'm hoping the 36-inch wide unit will fit in there. But if it doesn't, and here I've shortened it up to there, it's probably 29.5 wide. Here it's probably 24 wide. Or not wide, high. And I get a little bit more narrow, but anything can be done above that tub at that same location. And it's probably nice, it's up high anyway, so there's more privacy. Now we come in here, and again we're going to talk about these baths and why this is kind of critical. We assume that these walls, without window and doors coming, those walls go away, and bedroom 4 gains that space. And you'll have to consider what, if anything, wants to be done with this window. And then I just started messing around with this bathroom, okay, knowing what. And I had brought that this far along, and I was trying to maintain this door so that we didn't have to rebuy this door, and it matches those. But these other ones, there's new doors down through here, so because it looks like these are shown as 610 high for whatever reason. So I'm just showing that door there, but I don't think in the end analysis, I don't think I was able. I think I needed a right-hand swing rather than that left-hand swing. But in terms of putting this beam and what we have to do with these bathrooms, these are the 2 toilets on the second floor, and here's the one on the first floor. So it's pretty clear to me there's a stack coming through this wall. This wall is getting removed, and there's a stack coming down through there. And I think the outside stack, this is the other toilet here from the second floor, I think that is coming down this outside wall. I would have to go down that basement and double check that. I'm pretty sure that that's what's happening. So when we go up here, we overlay these walls. This toilet here used to come down through here. Now there's going to be a 22-inch beam where that made its turn to go down. So that's not going to work. So we need to get this 3.5-inch drain or 3-inch drain down to the basement somehow, because we can't drill across these with the 3.5-inch hole that we would need. We can't go across these. So the pathway has to go east and west. And probably these joists are something like that up there. And so this one here, and I returned to this, the pathway for this particular toilet at the very end of this film. So this only covers a bit of it, and then I'll return to it at the very end. But as you can see, this one really, if that stays in its place, which it may as well, I mean, we don't want to start getting into 2 bathrooms. If that stays in its place, this 3.5-inch drain comes down through here, and we have to do something different with your doorway into this sitting room. I did not address that. It looks to me like this margin would have to come all the way up to wherever we can get that, as far as this way as we can, and this can go anywhere it wants. But I don't show that. But if we want this doorway into this room symmetrical in this room, centered on that window that's down at the east face, I think that doorway becomes almost 32, 34 inches wide. I did not experiment with that, but that's one of the issues, and that's the only way I see of getting that 3.5-inch drain down to the basement from that existing toilet on the second floor. Now, this other one here, that's where it is now on the second floor, and that's its wall where it was getting rid of its pipe. And so now, where do we bring that pipe? We can't bring it there, so really we're going to be limited. That toilet needs to be located somewhere here in north, anywhere in that region on the second floor in that bathroom. But it's got to be this way, so we can bring that pipe this way and get it down through this closet and into the basement and back down to the drain, because we're taking out those walls that are now holding those pipes. So that toilet has to come forward at least at 3 or 4 feet to get it to there. And I just began to mess around, horse around with what could possibly be done in this bathroom to put together something like you had, which was 2 vanities, and I believe that was a tub that you were showing, and the toilet. So I started like this, using a standard tub, and this was just me, messing around, moving things around. That is as far to the south that toilet can go. And that was one of the first little things I put together, was a standard tub shower unit, and then with a linen cabinet down here. But it got worse and worse, really, in terms of that bathroom. And I put in this other wall, put in this flanking wall here on this diagram, just to know where and what could be done with windows. And really, after I was done with this, even at the very end, even though I end up showing a couple windows up here, I think it's almost more effective to just frame up for a 30-inch wide skylight and put a skylight somewhere in that bathroom, ventilating, solar operated or something, for natural light up there. But I endeavored to get windows in it in any event. And this is that window here, and it can be actually pushed up like this, so we can get that up off the roof some more if we want to get actual little windows in that space. Remember, this is the one over the tub. This is in the next bathroom, and it lifts up quite a bit, 5 or 6 inches, to provide clearance down here. And that kind of gave me some, and then I wasn't sure that tub was going to work there anymore, because there was a number of things that were coming into play, and I didn't think that was going to work anymore, and I went to a full shower, and I think that's really probably maybe one of the only things that will work, but someone else can definitely put together something if they can. But I ended up going in this direction here. I put that toilet where it would have the people would have a short entrance to it, and it would have a short pipe to get down to the basement. And you can see that's where we have to get another door that hinges that way. And I was able to get a couple of them, which this is a little bit more vanity space actually than the diagram you had originally sent over. These are 42-inch vanities here. The shower is 3x4 inside, which is a nice generous shower. You do have a bathtub on this floor in the event. You have a couple of tubs on this floor. So I went to a shower at this location, and maybe that's what you were indicating in the diagram. I went to a shower at this location, and these two vanities separate from one another, so there will be no argument about who has a messy surface. And the door to that shower, whether it swinging out, it's okay. I always worry about hitting that door that's coming in though, so I just have it swinging in, having some room for some switches here. But then there's a few other opportunities to use a little bit more of this space in here. So first of all, so there's no linen storage inside that bathroom. There's a closet down here, closet down here. There's no linen storage inside, so I pushed the toilet forward 8 inches because we had that space and wherewithal. Once I pulled that toilet forward because I knew I was going to put a linen cabinet over it back here, like what I showed back there. I don't know if that was installed, but we need some linen and toiletry storage in here, and I knew that I was going to have some space, so I wanted to look at these windows again. This window here anyway that I'd shown, and JELD-WEN actually makes a very small casement, 17.5-inch square casement. So I went to that, changed the lights to 4. It's a little bit of an oddball, but inside the environment of just that bathroom, it's fine, and no more people that are going to see it from the ground. I think it's also fine. But that's what I had done for the moment, is put these 2 windows there. Then I put this is a big tall linen cabinet. It's 12 inches deep, but it's all the way full tall, so there's plenty of linen in the bathroom. And we have these 42-inch vanities, and however you want to arrange that sink, these 42 inches, you end up with drawers on both sides, so that's pretty decent there. But then because we had that distance, I actually brought that forward, both of them forward, so that you could put 6-inch deep medicine cabinets behind them if you want, with no loss of space that a person needs. There's still plenty of space for a person to be at each of those vanities. And I just ended the bath design at that point because I knew we needed something. And if someone come up with something else, the toilet, as I said, the toilet needs to be somewhere in this square. And anything else you want to put together, you may. But that's what I put together and left for now, just to show something that is going to make sense and it's going to be doable. That toilet, that project is going to have to be done in tandem with that first floor beam work. There doesn't seem to be a way around that. So that's where we were on the outside then, with this 412 pitch over 212 pitch scissor truss, those being covered with this little 212 pitch cricket back here. So everything was working out pretty good. And if we drop that to 312, at that point that whole roof surface will have to be covered with ice and water shield. But it does do a lot of good in terms of those windows there. This is, if we drop to the 312, it's the red line. I haven't done that in this drawing, but the red line is 312, and that enables those windows to be regular kind of windows, even with their heads aligned through here. So that is one call. But if we do drop to that 312, you could have a 112 pitch ceiling in here, but that looks kind of a little funky to me. So I think if you drop to 312 pitch here, then it just becomes a flat ceiling inside, 10-foot flat ceiling inside. But there's with the 412 pitch as it is, and this was that little section I showed you. And now a couple things with regard to this wall. These windows are still shown in that raised state. Those are the really tall windows. And I'm showing siding up in this gable here, but this is all just that brick veneer. So really, well, a couple things. First of all, this brick veneer, I'm showing some detail here, some soldiers across these windows. When I do that, I bring them down where they're in alignment with each other. So all of that is lined through there. And I get away from those tall windows, and that's the top of the backsplash there. So whether you have to go shorter or taller or anything like that, you'd have to figure that out. And the final thing is just to run brick all the way up to the peak of this ceiling here, which is probably the thing to do. I don't know that it's that much more expensive. I mean, I guess this siding's pretty inexpensive, but those would be the two alternatives inside at that location. This arrives us at these outside looks of this structure. This is with the 412 over 212 scissor truss. And you can see this ground needs built up here. And this shows these windows going from that sliding window to a fixed picture unit in the middle, and then these flanking ones at the side. This becomes a little wider than that 8-foot slider, because these side ones I'm showing is 30 and 30, which is 5 foot, and I'm showing this. So this whole window unit became a foot wider than it was before, when it was just a sliding unit. You really can't see it from this angle, but this shows that happening. It also shows these downspouts thusly, because this one, as I said, you're going to have a downspout at that end as well. But this is picking up half of that roof anyway, and all of this roof. So I've moved this downspout this way, and I've added downspouts out here at these front columns. But I like the double hung flanking windows myself, and those could be a little bit more narrow, or the center unit could be a little bit wider. But right now that whole unit is shown as 9 foot wide. And remember, when I made that doorway under beam B skinnier, that's about 9'4". So that was where that was at that end. And here, building this ground up or doing something to address that topography. And from this angle here, this is just going to be a tripping hazard. So I just don't think that can happen. You can see the drop off here, but I don't think that can happen. So I think you really just have to bring this around. And actually this is probably going to be about the same, because there's less pavement. Even though it's 100% impervious, there's less pavement, but I don't think you can have this sort of a thing. So I think that has to happen at that end. I think that's the only sensible thing at that end. And then these from down here on the street, or from this angle here, well, this didn't show any downspouts at all. So I put those necessary ones in, and this one was still showing down here, kind of dividing that. And I think that actually looks better shifted that way. Your opinion may vary. And then this last move changes to those double hung windows on the side. And maybe you want those a little more narrow. But they are shown as 30 inches wide, so maybe those go down to 24, 26, 28, something like that. And I've left this just like this. I haven't gone back to that little hip roof there. And that is going to be it for that. So there's quite a bit to consider, but this is where I am right now, getting closer to construction drawings. Probably still a couple days, but once we finalize some of this stuff, and I know there's an awful lot that was said through here. This bath, I'm satisfied with this bath. If you don't need a tub in here, I think this bath is nice. And the only thing, whether you want to put these two little windows in here, which actually give you that kind of operating ventilation, or if I was just going to put a skylight, I would, get a skylight down right through in the center here. And the way that wall's constructed, probably this wall just goes right up into the bottom of the skylight here, vertical wall, and then the skylight comes back. And then when that door's open, that's going to really brighten up everything in here, more than these two little bitty windows will. But that is up to you. And I think that's it for now. This is practically a feature-length film at this point. I'm going to try to get it trimmed down to under 45 minutes. So thanks very much. Feel free to communicate any feedback that you have, or any confusion. Feel free to ask any questions. All right, I will talk at you. Actually, just so that this film is complete, I returned to this to make sure we address this. So the best case scenario is that this drain line, this 3.5 inch drain line, is moved over to there. these LVLs will no longer matter. But what has to happen is that this doorway, that edge of this doorway is going to have to come roughly to there, which changes to about a 43-inch door. And this header can be just chopped through here for that to make its drop down through. And it comes down into the laundry and mechanical area and then over to the drains. But with that 42-inch door, that, as you can see, does not have an alignment with this window, and if it did, it would only be a foot or two wide. So that is the rub there, that has to be put to the right side of that. And I don't really see there's probably, to be honest, there's probably a way that we could put LVL beam here and turn these joists and have it go down in through here. So you would have probably two, because I think that beam will handle it there. So I would say yes, that if you don't want this door, if you want this door to presumably stay centered on this window down here, okay, and then maybe even become wider than that 3'6". I think I was showing at 5'8". So let's just say that it becomes 60 inches wide and centered on this window. That's about in scale with it. It's a little wider than those casings, so it could be a little bit narrower than that. But if that were to happen, this gets a little bit funky, but so this has to come up here and turn and end up going down that wall there as an alternative. For that to happen, these two probably become LVLs. Right, so those two there, and these are probably, these other ones can probably just be two 2x10s. This gets really funky because these, me discovering that that's not going to work at that location either, and coming up with the next thing. So actually, it looked like this was the only way to do that, to turn that 3.5-inch drain this way and get down in that wall there, and use these two beams to beam that stuff off. I don't know how hateful that will be. These are just regular, you would just interrupt those, cut those, but I don't know how it's going to be getting those, you know, without damaging the ceramic that's directly above, at least in that commode area. So these ones probably won't be too bad, but when you cut these two, you have to be pretty careful. But that is the only way I saw to be able to preserve this door centered on that room and get that drain from out of the wall that we're removing and down that wall there. So I think that should kind of round out this film pretty well. Now I will see you later. Thank you.